Okay, so let us begin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on time. Really appreciate that. My name is Leonie. I'm one of the co-founders of the African Youth Security Network, which at its core wants to center youth voices in peace and security discourse in the African continent. We are so happy to have everyone here, and we're going to have a really, really interesting discussion about the state of security in the DRC. We have a wonderful presenter, author, scholar, campaigner, creative, Antonio, who's going to be giving us a deep dive into this. So please do take it away. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate, put it in the chat. Keep it till the end because there will be time for Q&A. But if you have any pressing questions, do write it down so you don't forget. So that's all from me. Antonio, please take it away.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much for the forum and the discussion. And I'm really, really glad we could talk about the DRC within this context, East Africa development of things and changes. And then we're having elections coming in the DRC in 2023. So most of the political actions, even security actions, they're kind of like taking that perspective, taking elections into consideration. And again, people are fighting already, disputing themselves between themselves politically to position themselves nicely for the upcoming elections. So discussing the state of security in the DRC. Sorry, I'm struggling. I don't know what's going on. Just a little bit. 1 second, please. All right. So discussing the state of security in the DRC, we're going to look at the current context, like what is going on. I think that will make a nice opening just to place us within the present time. And then we're also going to look at the key historical events, which will give the historical context to the state of security as currently experienced in the DRC. And after that, we'll talk about what happened after 2003, because that's exactly where some of the wars were resolved, some of the conflict and hear me? Okay. All right. So even the ideas of in the 90s, the idea of invading the Congo that like it's happened, and we're going to see in 1996, 1997, it was aiming at unlocking the potential of the DRC so it can power the development of Africa. So DRC, not just geopolitically, also in terms of resources and everything, it's like a carrefour to so many other countries. It has 9 countries surrounding it. And it could be a central point in exchanges, internal trade in Africa. And beside just external trade, will be also supplying, like it can power the whole of Africa. So there's so many things to think about the DRC and the role it can potentially play in the African development. And it's true, the DRC could definitely be a trigger. So before we actually get into the stuff, I just want you to look at this picture and answer that short question right here. There is a man stuck on a tree that is about to fall right here, and he was cutting the tree actually. And there's a snake in the tree, there is a lion on land, and there is a crocodile on sea. What do you think has to be done to save this man? Like, how can he save himself from this situation? So if we can get just 2 people to share, that would be a good place to start from. Anybody? Anybody want to share something?
Somebody has raised their hand, so please feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. This is kind of confusing. But for me, I think the only way this man can be saved is if this tree will fall into the water, that might have been, I think, easier for him, looking at the current circumstance he is in. Thank you.
So what about a crocodile?
Oh shit! I didn't see that, man. Wow.
Okay, actually, yeah, that's a good thought. We thought about it some time back. Any other person?
Can I try?
Yes, please.
Okay, so could we shake off this snake into the crocodile's mouth?
Okay. Okay.
So that's now the tree, because you know the snake is also fast in water, the crocodile is fast in water. So it's a very confusing picture, to be honest.
Yes.
But yeah.
Okay. All right. Any last person so we can move?
Yes, may I say something?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Whenever I see this image, it raises really very nice memories of my childhood.
Childhood, yeah.
It's actually plugged in our living room at home, and we always discuss on what would be the outcome. So somebody suggested that maybe by God's grace, the tree will fall on the lion's side. The lion will run away, and then the man also run away.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, basically, it's called Inakale. It's a popular painting in the DRC. It became popular in the 70s and 80s. And it's aimed to depict the state of Zaire at that time, because the DRC was called Zaire after independence. I didn't want to go, because it's going to take a long time to go to the historical background, how the DRC got independence and all that. So I skipped all that part and went straight to the fall of Zaire, because that's the beginning of the hell or the crisis experience in the DRC right now in terms of security. So this painting called Inakale was popular in different parts of the DRC, and it was trying to convey the state of the states at that time, where every other option President Mobutu had to solve, to save himself and the state, because he was the state, were just desperate. He couldn't stay on the tree because there is a snake, and the tree actually, it was just a matter of time before the tree falls. And it couldn't go into the lake because there is a crocodile. He couldn't go on land, so he had no way out, and nobody really knew what was going to be the solution, or exactly what President Mobutu was going to become, and the state was going to become Zaire at that time. And this picture, personally, and as I was researching, it could be the genesis or the beginning of the story of the Congo as we know it right now. It's got to a place where, because Inakale simply means there's no way out, like impasse, there's no way out. So the DRC found itself in that situation where the Zaire found itself in that situation where there was no way out. And that's what gives to, that was the beginning, and that's what led us, like from there, here where we are. So we'll talk the in-between, we'll discuss the in-between as we go. But the current context, looking at the issues, the first one we have is the problem of armed groups, which are spread across the different regions, especially in the eastern region, in the Kivu, North and South Kivu, and in the Ituri. The region is being put under a state of siege. It has been a couple of months now. It's supposed to be for only 60 days, 2 months, but they've prolonged it, and it's definitely going to be a year now that the region of Kivu, North and South, especially North and the Ituri, they will be put under a state of siege. And then you have some of the groups who are allegedly have ties with ISIS, and one of them is the ADF, the Allied Democratic Front, which is from Ugandan origins and operating in the DRC and killing people in the DRC almost every day. And they claim to be affiliated to ISIS. And according to a conversation I had actually yesterday, I haven't really researched on it. ISIS has been using certain part of DRC as a training ground or training camps. They have training camps in Eastern DRC facilitated by the ADF. So the other issue is transnational insurgency. Most of these groups operating in the DRC, they are from foreign origins. You'll have some which are from Uganda, like the LRA, the ADF itself, like Lord Resistance Army. You have the FDLR, the Force Démocratique pour la Libération du Rwanda, which they come from Rwanda. And then you have the Red Tabara from Burundi. And then another issue is the economic interest, because with every involvement, it could be non-state or state involvement in the DRC, has always had these two interplaying reason or motives to get involved in the DRC. One of them, it could be security, and the second one is economic interest. Like in 1996, as we will see, Rwandan troops went to Congo and Ugandan troops that went to Congo for security reasons. And then they found out, oh, we could get more. Yeah, why not? So, and the worst part is with all these armed groups exploiting the resources of the DRC, they've created this symbiotic relationship where they depend on each other. They have a legal network of distribution of, exploitation and network of distribution of resources that also bring them weapons and feed them, pay their militias, the militiamen and all that. And it's all just an interesting relationship of people who are supposed to be enemies actually working together. Personally, I was in my village in 2007. Yeah, I was a kid in 2007. Went to visit Mwenga in South Kivu, and we were at the market just after we arrived. There was this guy in civilian clothes with a huge gun, like a heavy gun with him. And he was standing next to a military officer of the Forces Armées, like the National Armed Force. And I was a little bit confused. I'm like, how? When they're supposed to be enemies? I was like, no, they do business. You have the Interahamwe, the FDLR who live around Mwenga, and they come during market days and they buy things, they sell things, and then they go back again to their camp. And that's how they live. And you'll find government officials and military officials living also in Mwenga. So they just coexist. They're not enemies anymore. So another issue is the failures. There are so many failed attempts to stabilize the region. And this can be blamed on the weakness of national institutions, which has failed to address the security issue in the DRC. Since 2003, when the country was reunified, and to when we had the first election, 2006, there were just many attempts like demobilization, integration into social life for those who didn't want to join the army. But all those things seem to not discourage other groups from creating themselves or officials from the national army to defect and create their own armed group controlling certain areas of the country. And then you had crooked power dynamic. The institution have been hijacked in the DRC. There are different players who have fragmented power in the DRC, and politics, even the army, have been areas of competition, people contesting for power and control. So among these players, you'll find local elites who are actually have amplified the ethnic dimension of all the conflicts that have happened in the DRC. It's like we are Rega, and you have the elders of the Rega community financing certain militias. You have the Mai Mai is actually their community financed, basically. They don't really have major countries supporting them because they're supposed to be local or traditional defense forces. That's what it's supposed to be. And they're financed and supported by local elite. You have international players like the multinational companies working in different parts of the country, exploiting minerals, doing that. In the South Kivu, you find multinational companies, corporations like Banron, exploiting resources, different things. You'll find others in the Beni region, Zaire, and even in the city of Entebbe in Uganda. They have an international airport, and there are many multinational companies or corporations that are working. The operation is based in the DRC, but their offices are on the Ugandan side. So you also have the international financial institutions that also dictate certain things, how the government allocate the budget. It's mostly dictated by the international financial institutions. So if the government had the intention of empowering the army by buying new equipment and all that, if the IMF or the World Bank do not allow that to happen, it will not happen. If the government want to invest in a military operation to neutralize certain forces, if that is not financially rubber stamped by the international financial institutions, it will not go through. And then you have now spoilers. Spoilers are mostly people living in the shadow. Some are locals, Congolese, some are from Rwanda, Burundi, just individuals who are also gaining from the crisis, and they don't want it to end. They want it to keep going and to keep going and keep going. So the other issue is that in many multilateral forums like the UN, AU, CAC, SADC, CRGL, the question of security doesn't really seem to be a priority, maybe theoretically, but when it's come to the practice of things, they seem to be more relaxed in these multilateral forums. They don't really push for practical, pragmatic solutions that will address the problem once and for all. So this is just a little bit of what is going on right now. In 2002, when the Second Congo War was being conducted, you will find the country divided into different parts and different military forces or armed forces operating in the country. In red, mostly they are Mai Mai, XFAR, Interahamwe, and FDD from Burundi. And then you'll find the people from MLC with Jean-Pierre Bemba, who's free now, is back in politics in the Congo. Used to occupy this part of the country right here with support of Uganda. And then you used to have the RCD Goma, supported by Rwanda. They used to occupy most of the Kivu, a part of the, we used to call it Province Orientale, and then in South Kivu, a little bit of Katanga, and somewhere in the Kasai. And then after that, you'll find RCD Wamba Diawamba and Uganda. So Uganda had a bunch of factions separated depending on territories and influences of local elites. So if the local elites from here, from the Isiro, do not get along with the local elites from here, they cannot have a common front, basically. So Uganda will support both still. And currently, this is how it looks like. This is the Kivu region, which Kivu and Ituri, which comes from this side down until somewhere here. And this is exactly how group have kind of like proliferating the region. You'll find some here, some there. So that's a bunch, and that's how messy it looks like. So in terms of solution, addressing that problem, the solutions that have been and that are still being pushed right now is this large UN mission. The MONUSCO, which used to be MONUC before, has been there for over 23 years now. I think they came in 1999. That's when they started operating the DRC, and the mission kept growing over the years. So that has been one solution to maintain peace, but it has been failing over and over again because of the problem of mandate. Carrot and stick, that's a strategy also used by the Congolese and suggested by the community, the international community, where you have military operation conducted alongside negotiations with armed groups. So it's just basically just maintaining this state of impunity when insurgent or the people who take arms against the government, they are rewarded. Because one formula that people use in the DRC most of the time is you want a certain position, you take arms, take a couple of hills somewhere in Eastern Congo, and then after that, you're going to negotiate with the government, and the government will give you positions, high position, the position you wanted to get in the army, the influence you wanted to get in the army. Or if you are positioned in the Kivu, and then they want to send you somewhere else, you don't want to go there, like they want to send you in the Kasai, you don't want to go in the Kasai region, you just take a couple of soldiers with you and you start your own rebellion. The government will come negotiate with you and you will be rewarded. That's why you had M23 coming back again. They had negotiations in Kampala when they were defeated. After they defeated an armed group, they went to negotiate with them to find some type of compromise, and yeah, they just let them walking around, just being free. And a couple of years later, they're back in action and they're still causing pain right now, killing people in DRC. Other solutions that are being suggested right now, you have that state of siege, which as well has not really shown much result right now. And it has been also tainted by many other factors like especially economic factors, where even people in the army, they are benefiting from that state of siege and they don't want it to end. So they will not solve the problem they were sent to solve because they want to stay a little bit longer and have access to the finances and everything that they need. You have the joint bilateral operations that have been conducted since last year, for instance, with Uganda. With Rwanda, it was a long time ago. Rwanda used to send its troops in the DRC to track the FDLR. And then you have the East Africa's DRC Congo force that is currently deploying. We had the first batch of the second batch of Kenyan soldiers going. Burundi is already on the ground. And Rwanda is supposed to be on standby at the border. They're not really entering the DRC because the people don't want that. So historically, how did we get to this point? So to understand, we have to go back into back to the 90s and look at what exactly happened, some of the key events that led to this situation. The first key events that are global. In 1989, we had the end of the Cold War, which created a shift in the global power structure where the USSR collapsed and the US became the sole superpower. And then you had early in the 90s, this new world order, which came with this wave of democratization and neoliberal ideas. We have to liberalize the market, open the political space, and all the dictators that were discouraged. It's happened here with Moi, it's happened in the Congo with Mobutu, being called to actually step down or just let other political party have the right to organize themselves and exist in the country. So you also had this gap north-south. Because of the change of global structure, you had a stretch of the developmental gap between the global south and the global north. The global south wasn't prepared, did not have the infrastructure to actually have a proper neoliberal system of economy. And the global north kind of like had that already. They already had what it took to actually just make the transition from Cold War to now this age of development with neoliberal ideas. So, and that developmental gap also created certain tensions in the underdeveloped countries where many groups started competing for resources, started competing for even belonging, question of identity, question of who owns what, who deserves which part of the country. And that also affected the regional context where you had the end of the Bush War in 1986, where Yoweri Museveni rose to power with the help of Tutsi refugees, and he became president of Uganda. And as he was about those Tutsi refugees, he wanted to support them as well, return to their country. So he gave them all the support they needed. And that's when you have the Rwanda Civil War beginning with the Rwandan Patriotic Front based in Uganda that started attacking, launching operations to attack the established government in Rwanda. So the entire civil war went from 1990 to 1994. There was this Accord of Arusha that was supposed to resolve the crisis, but as they were discussing and they were seeing how the accord can be implemented, the president's plan was shut down and preparation were already done. Everything was set for the genocide. So you had the Ora people killing each other, and a bunch of them, like the Rwandan institutions and everything, once they were almost defeated, they ran into Zaire through this Operation Turquoise. Turquoise operation is a UN operation with French troops that were on the ground. They created a corridor for Rwandan institutions who actually had committed a genocide and were running from the Rwandan Patriotic Front to escape to Zaire. Mobutu wasn't really interested in welcoming them, but he didn't have any choice, really. He wasn't powerful enough. He was having his own problems, and he was actually physically ill as well. So there was just a bunch of things happening at the same time that Mobutu could not address the problem properly. And you had this influx of refugees. You had a country taking in another country because you had the bank, you had the army with their weapon and everything, ammunition. They all crossed to the to the Zaire side, which is the DRC right now, in case you're still confused about what's the difference between Zaire and the DRC. It's the same country, just different times. So from 1994, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, they launched the ultimate campaign that allowed them to halt the genocide, stop the genocide, and took over power in Rwanda. They became the new masters. In the meantime, in the DRC, in Zaire at that time, you had the fallout of the genocide, which is the refugee influx. And then within those refugee camps, Interahamwe and the running army from Rwanda started recruiting and training, because the plan was to go to Zaire, regroup, and then return to Rwanda. That was their plan. So the DRC couldn't control much. So you will have people organizing themselves in these refugee camps and then going back to do some, to kill a few people in Rwanda and then come back to Zaire. And the Rwandans and Ugandans were not comfortable with that. They tried to get President Mobutu to address the issue, but he was like, this is not my problem. I definitely cannot do anything about it at the moment. The international community should be responsible for this. But the international community as well was ashamed because of their response or inaction during the genocide. So they were trying to be a little bit diplomatic and not involve themselves too much in what was happening in the region. But they were taking care of the refugees. Just, somebody makes a mess, the UN comes and cleans it up. So the power in Kigali wasn't comfortable with having these refugee camps used as camps for recruitment and training of soldiers to come and attack Rwanda again. So they decided to invade the DRC, Zaire at that time. And that's when we had the first Congo War that began in October 1996. And it was the invasion of Zaire by Rwanda and Uganda with some opposition figure. This guy being the leader of it, he was the porte-parole, this spokesperson, who ended up becoming president after the war. Now, let me just show you what happened here. This is how the war happened. So you had in November, clashes somewhere in Uvira. This was the first city to fall. Insurgents coming from Rwanda, like military troops coming from Rwanda and Burundi, they attacked. And then you had other one from Uganda attacking this side, and they all converge. And but I think in 60 days, I don't know what's written in the book. You're gonna read the excerpt and you're gonna understand. So after just a couple of days of fighting, they were able to control all these parts, and they decided, why not remove Mobutu once and for all, and just have a person who's friendly to Uganda and Rwanda and who's approved by United States in power. So they kept going, and the mission to push up to Kinshasa, I mean, the decision to push up to Kinshasa was decided in Kisangani when they took Kisangani, and they asked the population, do you want us to keep going or do you want us to stop? The population had no other choice but saying, just keep going. So they went ahead because also Zaire was also dying. The country was on a tree that was falling, snake, crocodile, and lion. So remember that. That's where the country was. So the people were also tired. They didn't know how the country was going to be saved, and they approved the advancement of the rebels to Kinshasa. And that's exactly what happened. So that's the first Congo War. By March 17 to 1997, Ugandan troops and Rwandan troops, they were already in Congo with some other troops that picked along, a couple of Mai-Mais who integrated the Forces Armées Congolaises, which was the armed wing of the movement Alliance Démocratique pour la, non, Alliance Démocratique pour la Libération du Zaire, du Congo, AFDEL, Alliance de Forces Démocratiques pour la Libération du Congo, yes. So, yeah, French, English, French name, speaking in English can get complicated, so sorry about that. And you had now this guy right here, Laurent Désiré Kabila, Kabila Senior becoming president on March 17th, and he rebaptized the country from Zaire to Congo, and he still had his allies with him. So you had the ministries led by foreigners, like a bunch of people from Rwanda. There's an official, the former general of the Rwandan army, and he was also Minister of Defense. James Kabarebe was actually highest commander of the troops in the DRC, in the Congolese forces. as if he was Congolese. So that was the situation. And then Kabila needed to gain internal legitimacy. People started looking at him with a bad eye because of all the foreigners he was surrounded with. The DRC has known a history of oppression by people coming in. And since the colonial time, every time somebody comes in and is trying to take power and people feel like they don't belong there, it becomes a problem. So he needed to get rid of his allies, his entourage, and be able to gain the love and the affection of the people to consolidate his power. And by doing that, he fell off with his partners, Rwandans and Ugandans mainly. They fell off. They couldn't get along anymore. He sent the Rwandan officers who were working in the Congolese army, he sent them away. The ministers, he sent them away. And Rwanda wasn't happy. Uganda wasn't happy. So they wanted to remove him the way they removed Mobutu. And that's what gave birth to the Second Congo War, which was basically the same thing here, like the same structure of the operation they conducted previously. But now they had an advantage. They started from a port here. The idea was to actually attack from the east and the west at the same time. Angola was supposed to stay out of it. And if Angola did not intervene, Kinshasa was going to fall, Kabila was going to be ousted. And the same way they removed Mobutu, Kabila was also going to go that same way. So Angola intervened, protected Kinshasa, and that's what led to this stalemate from 1998 to 2003, where you had the country divided into a bunch of parts. You have this part here in blue, controlled by the government, this part in red, controlled by the troops supported by Rwanda and Burundi, the RCD, and then you had this part here. Uganda actually was reigning in the north. Almost all these small faction of RCD, KML, RCD Wamba, Wamba, they were all supported by Uganda. And then you had also MLC supported by Uganda. So all different parts, this is how the country was looking. And then you had a neutral zone, this black zone right here, supposed to be neutral, and it was separating the two sides. In many cases, these people supported by Rwanda and the Ugandans, they clashed. In fact, there's a massacre in 2000, there was a massacre in Kisangani when the Rwandan troops and the Ugandan troops were fighting over some minerals, control over some minerals. So at this stage, the mission that led these two countries, Rwanda and Uganda in Congo, changed. They came to Congo to actually neutralize the insurgents and the armed groups that were actually attacking them and killing their people, and who were regrouping to go finish the genocide. That was the mission initially. It was a security reason. But after seeing, as I said in the beginning, after seeing the resources and what they could get from Congo, the economic side came in too. They wanted to exploit different regions where they were controlling, like the region they were controlling, wanted to exploit them. And the same happened with Uganda up here, and sometimes they would clash for that type of control. So it became more economic than it was about security. And then from after that, we had Kabila Mzee was assassinated in 2001. And in 2003, we had different accord making peace between all the parties fighting in the DRC. The Second Congo War was actually the most deadly. It's called African World War because you had 10 countries fighting on the Congolese soil. All of them, not just so for, how do you call it? Not because they wanted to help, but because all of them had some type of deal, all economic. Money, I'll give you this if you come help me, I'll give you that if you come help me. So quid pro quo was the way of going. It had nothing to do with ideology, because sometimes they try to frame it to be a Pan-Africanist thing. We're trying to have a united Africa. Some people want it this way, some people want that way, and they're clashing because of ideologies. It wasn't that. It was all just economic reason. So after 2003, you had the different negotiations, and the country was again reunified. Kabila assassinated, his son was in power. So the different faction, different parties were fighting, they all came together, they discussed, they agreed, and we ended up with this structure of sharing of power when you have one president and 4 deputy president, and you have a bunch of, they used to call them composants politiques, it's like political entities that were supposed to be represented in the new government. So addressing the security issue after 2003, when the country was united, the first act was to empower, like to work on national reunification and radical institutional reforms. We had a bunch of reform. We had a new constitution. We were supposed to go to election. We started to work toward democracy. And then the second act was to rebuild the national security forces, army and police, through these things. It's like recycling fighters from all the different factions that were fighting in the First and the Second Congo War, bringing them together to create this united army, and use this formula called brassage et mixage. It's like brassage, just brassage. I don't know how to say it in English. You're just mixing the people together to just, without any ideological training, without any type of re-education, so that you can have this national army that patriotic, that devoted to the cause of the people, and that can actually serve the country. So Act 3 was to demobilize and lead to social integration all individuals wishing to leave the military. So they kind of did that with the help of the international community, where they provided the financing for that. If an individual doesn't want to join the army, the national army, they could actually go back into their communities. There were a bunch of child soldiers. They all were demobilized, and they were reintegrated within society. And then you had the act was an attempt to demobilize and repatriate foreign insurgents.
Interesting.
Sorry. All right, so and the last act addressing the security issue, the solution that was proposed is to, because you had many foreign forces fighting on Congolese soil, and some of them, they already established themselves within the zones of exploitation. So the other solution was to take their weapons and send them back home. And the FDLR was supposed to be the same. All these militias are supposed to be the same. But that did not work perfectly. Like, it's a little bit worked, but not perfectly, because if it worked perfectly, we wouldn't have the problems we have today. And it did not work for a couple of reasons. Some of the reasons are ethnic contests and divisions. So you find different groups taking ethnic affiliation. You find different Mai-Mais taking different affiliation, ethnic affiliation. We are fighting for the Rega people, protecting the Rega people, or the Bashi, or the this, or the that. So that creates this impossibility to actually have a national army that's working for the states, that working for the national states, and not just fighting for the interests of a small ethnic group. M23 is talking about it right now. M23, they're claiming that the Tutsi population, the DRC, are being oppressed, and they want to protect them. They want to fight for them, for their emancipation. That's what they're saying right now. That ethnic dimension is so loud. And then you have state withdrawal, which comes back from the tree, with the man in the tree, the lion, the crocodile, and the snake. It comes from that period where the states couldn't do much. It was getting weak, and the president also was getting weak. So control over the whole territory, the vast territory of the DRC, was minimum. They couldn't control all the parts. The army wasn't paid very well. That's why they were defeated during the First Congo War very easily. And institutions, they had this political culture of patronage and this, according to Dosi culture, when you do whatever you want, since you have an umbrella that will protect you, like you have somebody superior to whom you are giving some money, you all are eating together or come from the same ethnic group, you can do whatever you want with the government institution and nobody will do anything. So in the army, it was also the same. The state wasn't really present. And it's actually believed that there are some areas in the DRC where you don't find the national police. There's no national police at all, or members of the army, they're not there because it's just too vast. The troops are very few. And some places, connecting different places can also be difficult because they are not road. There are difficulties with road and communication between places. So the state was just not present. And then you have the economic incentives. After you've taken a piece of the Congo, most pieces, especially in the eastern part, they have something valuable. They have something valuable, and there's an easy route to actually get those valuable things to the international market and make money. So with that, countries like state actors and non-state actors, they all went ahead and indulging into this exploitative business of taking stuff from the Congo and selling them outside, making money, developing their country, building roads and doing certain things. And sometimes it's just, not even developing the countries, but mainly enriching their families. So you have also the impunity. Most of the people who fighting who committed crimes during the First and the Second Congo War were all indemnity. They all got amnesty, basically. They had amnesty, and they were not being, they could not be tried or even jailed or even arrested. In fact, most of them, they're still in political position of influence right now in different countries. In Uganda, you'll find a bunch of people who are influential, powerful people who actually committed a lot of atrocities in the DRC. In Rwanda, the same. In Congo, the same. In Burundi, you'll find people who did that. They committed, killed people, raped people, and they're still powerful, influential, and nobody can touch them. So that also a big problem. And there's this, the UN mapping report that was released in 2010 that talks about it. And the names have not really been revealed. They just documented the cases of atrocity, war crimes, and then they have the names of the people who actually committed those, but the names are still in Geneva somewhere. They haven't been made public, but the report is made public. If you can have a look at it, it will give you a clear picture of what's going on and why Dr. Mukwege is also calling for transitional justice for the DRC, an international tribunal to try crimes committed in the DRC from 1993 to 2003. So impunity is one of the issues. Now, moving forward, looking forward, what I personally think, these are just my personal opinions based on the research I've made while writing my book, while also working on my senior year project, which was also on the international relations of transitional justice in the DRC. So the first problem is leadership. Like the first thing to address should be leadership. And in leadership in this term is to get the Congolese leadership in providing solutions to the crisis, because most solutions, they come from someone else. They come from Kenya, they come from New York, they come from Geneva, they come from different parts of the world, but never from. So we need homegrown solutions. What Congolese themselves actually think could be a solution to ending the crisis, security crisis that the country has known for so long. And that also should be coupled with the restoration of state authority across the DRC. That's something that's missing. The state's already been viewed as something like an absentee father. It's supposed to be your father. You're supposed to respect them by virtue of them being your father, but they're never present. They're only there to collect tax and to harass you through the police and other services that collect tax almost everywhere. So with the restoration of the state authority across the country should be that of the state really playing the role it's supposed to play in protecting the people, in providing the laws and the rules of the game, just this social political contract between the citizen and the idea of the state. So you have the next point would be cooperation, meaningful and win-win cooperation with countries involved in the crisis. And a bit of that is happening right now with the East African community and SADC as well getting involved. And I was also taking over the CAC, the Central African Economic Community. And now we need to define, because I remember even here in Kenya, when we joined the East African community, many young people asking themselves, how do we gain from joining this? And I had the same question too, and we're supposed to have an event that will discuss that. And then I just had thoughts. It's all about exactly how we want to gain from it. Because I was working for a Kenyan-based agency that I helped open a branch in the DRC, operation in the DRC. Sorry. Yeah, I helped them open a study operation in the DRC. And you can see they don't wait for the states to do certain things. For them, it's about taking the step necessary, taking advantage of the rules that already been put in place when it's come to the community, like how a Kenyan company is supposed to, what are the incentives for a Kenyan company to move to the DRC, for instance. They get to learn those rules and they play the game. So this win-win cooperation leads back again to the Congolese themselves being aware of what are the potential, what are the possibilities around them, and how they can exploit those possibilities. So we also have the next point is the reforms. We need institutional reform, mainly involving security. Like the army need to be remodeled and serve the state. The formula of brassage and mixage, recycling fighters, did not work. It's still fragmenting the army right now. People are backstabbing people. Mamadou Ndala, one of the generals who helped chase away M23 in 2001. I need to remember the date. Yeah, he helped them. He was one of the main figures who actually helped push away the M23 out of Goma. He was killed by his own people, by his own soldiers, by his own colleagues. So all that speaks to the fragmentation, people serving different interests within the army and not serving the interests of the state. So you have the last point is justice. An international judiciary body should be put in place to provide justice so there can be reconciliation. And that would be a nice way to restore the dignity of the Congolese, because I'm not sure the Congolese are confident enough to know that they can provide solutions to their own problems. Every time I go home, and you can hear even how we speak, they're always this they. Decisions are always made by somebody else somewhere. So for me, I'll just listen to the decisions and just follow what is being instructed to me. So, and that dignity can only be restored if certain lives of Congolese, they are declared to be what, especially those that were lost, when the collective consciousness accept them as losses, because for now it's just casualty of war. That's how it's viewed, like casualty of wars. We don't see the dreams, we don't see the personal aspiration of those individuals. We just see numbers and statistics. That's all we see, and that's exactly why I even wrote a book with a personal story, just so I can contribute to that, recovering the dignity of the Congolese person. So I don't know for how long I went, but yeah, that's all for now. Let's the discussion begin. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, sorry, my light also went off too. Thank you so much, Antonio. Extremely interesting learning a bit about the history, especially from your perspective. If anybody has any questions, please do. You can either type them, you can raise your hand. Okay, we have a question, so please feel free.
Okay. Thank you so much, Antonio, for sharing this. Very insightful. I am Abba, working in the Lake Chad region, focusing mostly on the issue of Boko Haram and ISWAP. So this is quite interesting to see a shift of paradigm in the insecurity in the other part of Africa. So basically, my questions are three. Okay, I got them written here. So here in Lake Chad, when the government forces and the insurgent continue pushing people down the lane of oppression, at the end result, we had the community now revolting back and even establishing a non-state armed group to defend themselves, known as the Civilian Joint Task Force. Yes. So I'm just curious to know if during the transition in Congo, if we have any community resurgence of armed group to defend the community. This is one of the questions. Second question is, while all this is going on, and when the USA got into the superpower spot, what's the stance of the Soviet Union or just Russia in all the transition that has been happening in Congo? Is there any interest? Have they been part of any peacekeeping processes? Then the last question is, how are Congolese working towards localization of peace processes and humanitarian aid interventions in their country, considering the fact that you made mention of some of the spoilers, and that includes all these international humanitarian organizations coming in for peacekeeping processes, peace building processes, or humanitarian aid interventions. Are Congolese being part of those processes and even working toward localizing them? Thank you.
All right, thank you. should I answer those questions as we take the next one?
Please,
because I wouldn't
please
want
answer.
to forget them.
No,
Right,
please
cool.
answer those questions, and then we have another one in the chat which we'll tackle after.
Awesome. So for the community forming their own self-defense groups, that's exactly what gave birth to the Mai Mais. If you ever heard of Mai Mai, they use mystical. It's a mystical things to actually conduct war. Actually, I have one uncle who used to be Mai Mai, and they have stories of him being shot at, and like bullets will just drop, like it will hit him and just drop. So the Mai Mais and other self-defense, like community defense groups, they actually so many in the DRC, they're actually part of the problematic. And some of them evolved to become armed groups, like full-grown armed groups, and start fighting with other armed groups and all that. So yeah, that seemed to be like a logical response, especially in the DRC, where there's this sense of state withdrawal. The army has tried to neutralize armed groups, but they seem to be failing, and the people are still getting killed. Recently, like a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, in Beni, young people started organizing themselves, started organizing trainings to actually be able to take care of themselves. And there's this concept that began with that people say, se prendre en charge. Let's take care of ourselves, basically. And that mentality is pretty much alive. And I think putting the region under the state of siege was one of the ways to neutralize that trend. That's what I actually believe, reading the situation right now, because the military government held the power. They have some type of martial power. They can shut down whichever organization they want to shut down, arrest whoever they want to arrest, who seem to be a threat to the region. So those small groups organizing themselves, who want to take care of themselves, could also be viewed as insurgent groups and neutralized by the current government holding the state of siege in the DRC. So yes, that response is very much there. Now, for the Soviet Union was actually, they were dealing with their own stuff until actually they got involved in the Congo during the Lumumba time and Mzee Kabila. They were supposed to support, there was plans to support Mzee Kabila when he entered power and when he fell off with his partners during the Second Congo War. So during that time, they were pretty much involved by illegally selling weapons and doing some other type of training for the Congolese, like the governmental armed forces at that time. So they were involved, but it wasn't really pronounced. It wasn't out there. And when the son of Kabila, the son, in 2016, when he fell off with Americans, when they wanted him actually to be replaced, he went back to his father's plan, trying to get the Soviet Union, like not the Soviet Union, the Russia involved again. So it has been that thing. Russia is always this circumstantial partner, the DRC, when the power in place doesn't get along with the Western world, they turn to Russia, but they try to keep it quiet. They try to keep it just on the low, not talking about it, not making a big deal out of it, like it's done in the Central African Republic. And for the localization of the peace process in the DRC, there's a problem with that as well. As you mentioned, the humanitarian aid coming in has made people a little bit comfortable. So there's this huge humanitarian industry that even locals, they're participating into it. So they create association that's supposed to improve or help support negotiation, community negotiation, this and that, peaceful cohabitation. But the financial gain is mostly at the forefront or just hidden behind the good intentions. So you have good intentions presented where they have this project. We're going to pacify this area by, getting this ethnic group and this ethnic group to sit down and talk about their problem, their issues and all that. Of course, they will do that in the beginning. And then at some point, it becomes about the aids they get from outside, the fundings and all that. So local people has also got into that, how to make money. So now it's about mostly survival. How do we survive? And that's when relying on a weak civil society cannot really solve the problem of the DRC, because they're all reactional and most of the time manipulated by politicians. Currently, we're having the uprising against the UN mission. Who's pushing for that? The population was actually blaming Rwanda. They were actually after Rwanda before that happened. And then politicians said the UN is the problem. Forget about Rwanda. Rwanda, we already resolved that. The M23, we already talked with Kagame in how to call this place again? In Angola. We already spoke with Kagame in Angola, so that is settled. Now we need another person to throw stones at. So the UN mission was the next one to do. So there's always this manipulation. So you can't really tell who's the devil, who's the angel. And when it's come to the population being confused, they decide to just, be happy, trying to have a small little family, make some money, and just live a life before you die. So there was that passiveness that's been imposed on the people that does not allow them to actually participate in the peace process. I hope I answered to that.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions and comments in the chat. So I think I'll read it out, but just for your reference, if you could also open it so that you can see. So the first question is, do you think the EAC mission will make a difference to the security situation in the DRC? I don't see this as part of the homegrown solutions recommended. And then I think Eric's comment is a response to something, but Eric says, to the extent that outside assistance is required to subdue the M23 and other insurgencies in the Eastern DRC, and EAC joint force offers certain advantages over ongoing bilateral interventions. The multilateral force structure, which includes the DRC itself, may help blunt perceptions among Congolese that outsiders are intervening in the country to secure particular foreign interests. And then not the last one, but Nathan says, in your opinion, what are the reasons that Tutsi Congolese community in the DRC feels marginalized by other citizens? What exactly is the problem's core and what can be done about it? And then we'll look at the rest of the questions.
All right. The EAC being a solution, it's a 50-50 thing, because even experts from the crisis group, they're also doubting there are certain considerations that have to be put in place. I'll share the link, the article. I just read through it quickly. And it's putting this intervention, because external intervention in the DRC has always been the problem. In fact, personally, when I saw that happen, I felt like we were going back to 1996 again, when you have these troops from foreign countries coming in for security reasons, and then they find that they can do more. They can do more than just conduct the military operation, and then they will try to exploit certain things. So that's also one of the fears. Because in the history of the DRC, no country has ever sent their troops in the Congo for Congolese people. It's always been for their own self-interest. So when Kenya was, for instance, Kenya was taking the front seat in, taking the lead in the negotiation with the militia that was happening here at Safari Park, a few meters from where I live. And even sending troops there without it being publicized, before even the EAC Congo force being decided. And that side, why are they doing that? And we kind of know the foreign policy of Kenya is about gaining market. It's economic interest. If I can make money out of this, it's not worth my time. And that's how their foreign policy is conducted. And with that, we just said, okay, there are reasons to be skeptical. And there are also reasons to be hopeful, because if the Congo is open it's open for business, it's beneficial for the entire region, for the entire East African region. So, and even the world, Africa and the world as well. So with that, them stepping into that is taking leadership into promoting development in the region, and also their own development for Congo at the same time. So there's that, just, those side of the coin that we don't know which one is going to land on. Like, you just flip the coin and you'll see what happens after. So there are reasons to be skeptical and reason to be confident. So about the, I hope I responded to that. Okay, about the Tutsi and Congolese community in the DRC, all this began with myth. Actually, it's embedded in myth. The first story that we are always told is that the Tutsi have always had this idea of creating an empire called the Hima Empire. Yes, the Hima Empire that stretches from Uganda to Eastern Congo, Rwanda and Burundi. So there's that story of the Hima Empire. And that story came out in the early 90s when Museveni took power, and then you had the Rwanda Patriotic Front start fighting government in Rwanda and the common beliefs, because at the same time you also had Tutsi having issues with Hutus in Burundi as well. So the common belief was they are trying to take control of these countries, and then they're going to carve a piece of the DRC and create that Hima Empire. So is it true? Is it a conspiracy? Nobody really knows. And the problem in DRC now began with the Banyamulenge, who are from Rwandan origin. They live in the South Kivu. Because of this Hima problem, they started being viewed as foreigners who were allowed to be in Congo for security reasons because they were running away from some king back then in Rwanda. So they came to Congo and they were allowed to stay on this mountain called Mulenge. That's why they call them Banyamulenge, like the people from Mulenge. So it started with those people. Inside Banyamulenge and Bavira fighting each other. You know, it's like you're foreigners, you are making more money than us, you are trying to subdue us, there's this empire you guys want to form and blah, blah, blah. So you're definitely co-conspirators of this plan. So it started being attacked, and that's actually when the fight began for the first Congo War. And after that, Uvira was taken, and their allegiance to Rwanda, which is viewed as an enemy, becomes also a problem. When we were kids, there used to be this association called Association of Rwandophone, like people who speak in Rwanda. They're supposed to be Congolese, but they speak in Rwanda. And all of them seem to be loyal to Rwanda more than loyal to Congo. And with the story of the Hima Empire, we just said this will be the ones who are actually going to sell us. They are Congolese, of course, of Rwandan origins, but they're going to be the one that want to sell us. So that breed this mistrust, and the mistrust lead to hate.
Thank you so much. I think there is so much more that could be looked at, specifically Rwanda and Congo relations, but we won't go into that. So Eric comments about the EAC countries should not hesitate to end operations if they fail to achieve their stated objectives, and especially if they find they are worsening rather than improving the security situation in Eastern DRC. To the extent they lend assistance, organizations like the AU and EU should stay carefully attuned to reports from the field and be prepared to curtail their support should the intervention go awry. The UN Security Council should be very cautious about appearing to endorse the mission, at least until it has a track record demonstrating that it is doing more good than harm. Civilians in the Eastern DRC have suffered repeated bouts of armed violence for nearly 3 decades. Thank you for that comment.
I agree totally.
Amrai has shared the crisis group report about the DRC. Profina also thanks you for your enlightening presentation, but they have a question about the president of Angola acted as a mediator to reconcile DRC and Rwanda from the M23 tension created in the eastern region of Congo. Do you think this approach will bring peace despite the fact they've been having a lot of other countries and leaders reconciliating them?
Right now, I think all the cards are on the table because people are not hiding anymore. President Kagame used to deny involvement of Rwanda in the DRC, and I had 2 theories about that. Either it's not him directly doing getting involved in the DRC, like sending his troops or supporting insurgents in the DRC, or he's just playing political game, or he doesn't know what's going on, because most of the time when the DRC is attacked is always Rwanda somewhere. Either it's through Rwanda, that's where the weapon came into Congo. Either the people are claiming to defend the Tutsi, like the Rwandan from the Congolese from Rwandan origins. There's always Rwanda somewhere every time there is a blow up. And also the problem of FDLR. He has been talking about it so much that he feels like the DRC should take it more seriously. And the question has always been, his puppet rebel group, RCD, controlled the eastern part of the DRC, as I showed on the map, for 5 years. how come they did not neutralize the FDLR? So it's like, okay, they were busy exploiting the Congo, so they didn't have time to actually resolve the problem. And now, what's the problem? So still the control. And I think this is more economical than security. And there are so many things that they're not telling us, like Kagame himself going to represent the M23. He's the one who signed the how to call it, the ceasefire on behalf of the M23. In what capacity did he do that? So what is his role exactly? And that happened, in fact, he accepted to go after it was found out that the weapon used by the M23 came from China through Rwanda. In fact, they were bought by Rwanda and then given to the M23. So right now, with the pressure that he's having from different parts of the world and even from the region, from the sub-region itself, I'm sure he might change his strategy, especially his approach when it comes to the DRC, how to deal with the DRC. And that could be an approach that will bring some type of stability. I believe that could be possible. It's a possibility as well.
Thank you for sharing that. If anyone has any other questions, please do raise your hand or you can post it in the chat. If not, with the last few minutes we have, I would love for Antonio to share a bit about his book, his upcoming book that he has coming out. I guess your motivations for writing it and what you want the outcome to be when people read this book. I've had the honor of reading a little bit of it. Very, very interesting. So for those who haven't had the chance to go over the intro chapters, just share a little bit about it.
So about a book. Sorry, what was the question again? I was distracted reading at the same time.
No worries, just sharing a bit about your book and your motivations for writing it.
Okay. The motivation for writing the book, in fact, I was at Amnesty International when I started writing the book. When somebody asked me, where do you come from? Like, which part of the Congo you come from? I told them I come from Goma. They probably Googled it. They saw a bunch of things that are not pretty, because every time you go to Goma, you see armed groups, you see just refugee camps and all that. And they asked me questions like, have you ever been in a situation of conflict? Have you ever been, if you ever shot somebody, have you ever shot at, and all that, those questions. And then I told them briefly about my experience in the first Congo War. And then they asked me, how do you think that experience at an early stage of your childhood affected you as a grown-up now? And that's when it started. And in the beginning, it was a story about me. It's about my journey through the first Congo War. And I realized I'm not the only person who actually went through that at that same age. So there's an entire generation of people being affected by different conflicts in the DRC at an early stage of their childhood. And they are growing up to be a certain type of adult with those scars of being introduced to life through conflict. And my idea was, if I had to search my Congolese identity, what is it based on? It's based on my Congolese experience. What's my Congolese experience based on? So it was just exploring the Congolese, what does it mean to be Congolese? And also looking at what can be done to empower Congolese. As I said, the problem of dignity, the problem of capacity, thinking that we're not capable of making our own decision, thinking that we're not capable of determining our destiny. That started from the colonial time. It went on post-independence. It went on through all the wars, and everything was just, decision being made somewhere, somebody else deciding, and you get affected. So I was like, how can we tell the Congolese experience from a Congolese perspective in an integral way in the sense that you have the good, the bad, the ugly, all of them together. Yeah, cool. I'm a Congolese. I'm traumatized. I go to therapy very often because I have problem with relationships. And I can trace that to this need for safety, this constant need for safety. Why? Because guns, desperate people, helpless and hopeless moments made my childhood experiences. So, and I'm here also talking about the Congo, speaking English, which is now my native language. I learned English in 2011. So all those things, the beauty and the ugliness of our experiences all mixed together. That's what I wanted to communicate in the book by starting with a story of one kid and what he experienced through the first Congo War.
Thank you so much for that. And just, giving us an insight into your motivations for the book. I would love to talk more about it, but we have run out of time. We do have one last question, which says, Nobel Peace Prize Dr. Denis Mukwege as the future DRC president, what's the probability of that happening and what will be the impact?
People are pushing for that for some reason that I don't understand, but I guess it's just a lack of alternative, because all the people who will be candidates in 2023, they've all been involved with each other. It's like their hands are already dirty, so they cannot be trusted. So we want somebody new. And Mukwege, he was supposed to be the face of a new generation of Congolese leaders. That's even why he got the Nobel Prize. The Americans, when they lost Moise Katumbi, they tried to push him. And when they failed with him, they released Jean-Pierre Bemba. So it's all a political game for the moment, which I personally don't trust. Because I was in Bukavu, where he comes from, very few people like him. So yes, very few people like him because of some obvious reasons. One of the reasons they don't like him is that there is a specific humanitarian fund allocated to Eastern DRC. So many other, as I said, the humanitarian industry in the DRC, you have many organizations trying to tap into that fund that is based somewhere in Europe, I think in Brussels. So many organizations will send their proposal to get funding for projects, and they will tell them the money allocated for Eastern DRC has already been sent to Eastern DRC to some operations. And the person at the center of those operations is Mukwege. So first of all, it's like, yo, you're getting the money, we're not getting anything, and we hate you, we don't like you. So there's another thing, as ethnicity as well coming in. People accuse him of only hiring, empowering an ethnic group called the Bazibaziba, which is actually a sub-ethnic group, the Bazibaziba. So the rest of the people just don't like him because of that. And the last thing is where the hospital of Panzi is located. There's this, that it's like in the middle of a village in Panzi, where they have electricity, they have water, but the surrounding area doesn't have anything. So people are just like, why can't he offer us the electricity? Why can't he offer us? So in South Kivu, where he comes from, people don't really like him, but maybe a prophet is not a prophet in his own house. So when it's come to the role of the DRC, what will happen? And personally, I'm not sure he's interested in politics. I'm not really sure he's interested in politics. I think he just want to do good things. And that's even why he couldn't run in 2019, after all the Kabila saga was over. So I believe he's not really interested, but we will see.
We will. Thank you so much, Antonio, for joining us. Thank you for giving us this really interesting presentation. Please do let us know where we can find you. You can share your LinkedIn. Let us know when the book is out and when we can be buying it, as I know a couple of people here are really interested in that. Thank you all for coming and joining us. Josephine, the co-founder of the AYSN, has put in the chat some of the links where you can find us. You can join our WhatsApp group, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Our members are able to put on events like this one where we can share their work, their interests, and their insights, and all learn and come together. So it's really good that you guys were able to come and join us. I hope everybody has a good evening. Thank you once again, Antonio. Okay, that's all from us. Bye.
Bye.